Welcome to the Let Good Things In show. I'm your host, Amanda Acker. I am so happy you're here. At the Let Good Things In show, we talk all about second chances, resiliency, following your intuition, and even music. Listen to hear stories of hope and to be inspired. Remember, you are stronger than you think. Let's dive in. Hi, my amazing humans. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I am so excited to be bringing you my guest, Joseph Reid. Joseph has had a passion for loving and helping people from a very early age. He is the founder and executive director of Broken People, an international mental health peer support group. He is also very active as a peer support specialist and family advocate with NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the nation's largest grassroots mental health nonprofit organization. He is extremely passionate about following God's direction, loving and serving his wife, Melissa, of 24 years, and trying to keep up with his 4 awesome grown kids. He is currently the author of Broken Like Me and oversees several other brilliant writers on his website's blog that can be found at www.broken-people.org. Hi, Joseph. Welcome. So happy to have you here.
So great to be here. Thank you for having me, Amanda.
Yeah. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. You know, I did start reading your book, but full transparency, unfortunately, life did not give me the time to sit down and read the whole thing, which makes me sad. I'm really looking forward to being able to read it all the way through. So with that, could you tell us, just a little bit about your experience with your own mental health and what you went through and how let's just start with that. Like, tell us your experience with your own mental illness.
Yeah, so I didn't even know it was a mental illness. So I'm 45 years old. And, back in elementary school, my teacher, my second grade teacher, and this was probably back in 1981 or 1982, pulled my parents aside and said that there was something off about me. I recently wrote a chapter in someone else's book where I talk about my experience. My nickname was Joe Booger because I would always run around just picking my nose and chasing girls, and it was this weird thing I was doing in a strange effort to get attention. And what I didn't realize was my anxiety acting out, and not knowing how to do social interaction very well. And so I went to this weird extreme where I would run around and chase girls and boys with my boogers and it's kind of funny, but at the same time, it's like I was building this story for myself that pushed people away, made me disgusting, and I thought I was a freak and thought I was alone in this world, being Joe Booger or whatever. I thought I was the only one because everybody treated this so disgusting. When in reality, it was just I was doing it, but I was doing it in the open when everybody else was doing it in the closet. It's kind of like
right, exactly.
Picked their nose. It was just not something they made public. And that's something I have found that I've done now here more recently with my trichotillomania. And what that is it's a hair pulling disorder. So I find myself when I'm anxious, I'm pulling hairs out of my face, and I'm eating my hair, and I don't know that I'm doing it. And it's even now it feels really, really gross to tell you, but there are so many other people that deal with that, and it's not. And things do seem gross when we don't talk about it. So what ends up happening is I get these infections on my face, and people will say, "Hey, what's going on? You had this huge infection," and it's like I got to make up a story or something because I don't want to go into the fact that trichotillomania, I've got this anxiety disorder, and I don't even know it's happening. But then when I do find myself with an infection, or I find myself pulling my hairs out, then I can see and look at my situation and say, okay, why am I doing this? Like, I see that I'm doing it and I didn't realize it, but now that I do, Like, what is going on in my environment that's causing me to feel this way? Well, back in 2001, my wife had caught wind of my journaling habit, and found some very disturbing pictures I drew of myself that were me in the act of committing suicide. And like, I was just in my weird way, was just trying to gain the courage to do something. So in my journal, I would try to psych myself up to kill myself, and I would draw these pictures, kind of fantasizing about it. And so one day she decides to, kind of draw a line in the sand. I got home from work, and she's like, "Hey, either you're going to go to the hospital, or I'm going to have the police come take you and put you in the hospital." Which is a unique thing, because this is something more and more police officers are talking about right now. I just spoke at a police academy here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, about mental health. They had me come, and I was the keynote speaker to talk about their training, how they deal with mental health emergencies. Because when you have a mental health emergency, the first people usually involved are the police, and it really matters how well they handle that situation. And more often than not, they handle it really well, and I've experienced that. But there are extreme cases and times when it's handled very poorly, and that unfortunately has a life or death consequence to it. So nationally, the police community are really working toward fixing that. And I used to be a police officer in Grand Rapids, so having that brief experience in my life is really helpful for me to connect with law enforcement. And a lot of my friends are just ex-cons. I remember going to my friend's wedding, Ruben, and he had just gotten out of prison, and four of the people that were standing up with me had just gotten out of prison. And I'm the last one in this line on this wedding party, and I'm an ex-cop, and with all these ex-cons. It was such a fantastic story. But for me, that's the fantastic thing. That's just a testimony in my mind of how God works. There's no distinction between the people.
Right.
We're all equals, and whether you're somebody that believes in God or not, it's like there's this idea that I'm not better than you, and you're not better than me. We're humans, like you said earlier.
Yes.
And so, long story short, I went to the hospital after my wife, convinced me to go that one time. Experienced a lot of trauma in the hospital. There were a lot of crazy things that happened, and I talk about that early on in the book, and we can discuss that a little bit if you want to. Which made me never want to get that kind of mental health care again. I did.
Right.
Like, I was in the hospital for 2 weeks at that point. And it was another decade before I actually went back to the hospital and got the real help that I needed. So I'll stop there. I said a lot, so I want to.
Yeah, in your book, you did talk about, your experience that first time in and the horrific things that you had to witness, and how, I know the one story that stuck out to me was about the gentleman who, I can't remember, he didn't want to be there, trying to put him in a room by himself with like the padded walls, and how he bit that guy's finger off. And I was just like sitting here going, what? Like, I can't believe you had to witness that, and I also can't believe that, somebody was feeling like that he felt that that's what he had to do to survive the situation. I've not experienced that, so I cannot put myself in that person's shoes, but I could imagine how scary that would have been for him and you, going through that. And when you talked earlier too about, I can't say the word right, but the hair pulling disorder that you have, and how you felt like, you were the only one. There was this girl that I went to school with who had that disorder, and she got made fun of for it and got told that she was gross and she was weird and she was this. And, that's so wrong. Like, we have to remember, like you said, that we're all equal. Like, just because, we have mental illness does not mean that we're somehow weird or strange, like including that man who unfortunately bit the person's finger off. He's human. And we all deserve to be heard, and we all deserve to be treated with respect.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think a lot of times gets looked over because we're so accustomed to making fun of what we don't understand. Right?
Yeah. I was really challenged by a friend. I had almost finished writing my book, and I had, in the end of that chapter, I build on what you just said, and what you said is just so emotionally brilliant. I remember, like, there were things that happened. There were people that were having sex in the shower. There was, gun magazines flying around. There was a naked lady standing next to my bed one morning. There was just a lot of weird things that happened there that shouldn't have happened. And I go through and I tell those stories in that chapter. It's one of the earlier chapters in the book, and then I kind of end it like there's all these weird people there, and then I go into another part of my book. But a friend really challenged me. She's like, Joe, your book is about broken people, and you kind of make these people out to look weird, and so she really challenged me in that chapter. Is like, make it relatable, make them bring out their humanity, and that's what you did so beautifully just then. Is just bring out their humanity. The person was really struggling. That when he bit off the finger of that worker, he was terrified, and he was the fear that it took to do something like that. And the worker, who was trying to subdue the guy. I mean, he was, trying to care for him and do a good job, but was probably angry too.
Yeah, I could imagine
things. And there was one lady that was in a room. It was right after dinner, so it was like there was one lady having a panic attack. There were people screaming. It was a mess. And each one of those people deserve respect in their story. And the fact that you just put that together so beautifully right now, it's just, that's pretty incredible. And I continue to grow, and I continue to try to we have to grow out of a tendency to be weirded out by things, and it's so easy to label or tag something as odd, and really what it is it's a prejudice, Amanda. It's a prejudice, and that's birthed in pride. And there are some more recognizable prejudices in the world, and then there's the smaller ones that we don't think a lot about. But I think what they have a tendency to do is they have a tendency to create division and in our communities and in our own hearts. And I wonder how much of that prejudice we turn inward and think about ourselves, Amanda, that we're not good enough, that this aspect of who we are makes us unworthy. And what I try to do in my book, and what I try to do, because I have such a strong community of support and amazing people in my life, is be a little bit more vulnerable, be a little bit more honest, so that maybe something through my story will help another person realize I'm not that much of a freak. I'm not that much. And you hear people tell you all the time, you're not alone. You're not alone. What does that mean if you can't show me? So I say a lot of the embarrassing things that people won't say, or stories that they won't tell, because I want to show people they're not alone.
Yeah, and that's with what you said too. When as a society, we tend to make mental illness a strange thing, right? So if you're out and about and you're hearing all these, things on TV and on social media that, oh, this person's a weirdo, and this, people who have schizophrenia or this, that, and the other, but then you don't know who's reading that information.
Mm-hmm.
And the person on the other side receiving that information, if they have that disability or that disorder, or they're feeling like, they may have something else going on, they're more prone to hold that in and not get the help that they deserve. I know for me, it was really hard to come out and tell my story and my experiences and things like that, because I thought I'd be judged for it. And that's not fair.
Yeah.
We should all rally around each other. And I know that unfortunately that probably will never happen, but it would be wonderful if more people would be more open to discussing mental illness and bringing it to light, so that more people can come out and get the help that they need and feel like it's okay, because they will realize that they're not alone and that there isn't anything wrong with them and that it can be helped. And there are people out there who will embrace them and help them and rise and help lift them up so that they can have that life that they deserve, because nobody on this planet deserves to be treated like they're less than. And mental illness is, it is a prejudice. You hear it all the time.
Mhm.
Oh, that person's weird. And when I grew up, oh, this person, like he's a weirdo. But you don't, how can you label someone a weirdo? You don't know what they're going through, and it's not fair. Like I can't stand when people say that kind of stuff. Like it really like drives me crazy, because I grew up thinking, I was raised to believe that people were strange, and that if they looked a certain way, they were, if they were heavier, they were gross, and if they didn't act a certain way, they were weird. All the friends that I had were weirdos. I was literally raised to believe that. But so whenever I came into realizing who I was and currently am, I felt strange for being sad all the time. I felt like my depression and my anxiety was something that labeled me as less than. And if I talked to a therapist, oh my goodness, like I was a whack job, and that's not right. Those thoughts should have never have crossed my mind. It's just, we need to bring awareness. And that's why I'm so glad to have you on the show and to be able to share your book with more people, because it's really important that we talk about this stuff and make it less, I don't even know what the word is, but make it less prejudiced. Is that a thing? I don't know. I think you know what I'm trying to say.
It is now. I think, labels are so easy to throw out there. It's a way that we try to simplify life. And I want to bring up 2 points. One about friendship, and the other one about law enforcement. So friends, one of the things I challenge later on in the book, it's 130 pages, all about friendship as a foundation for mental health. And I talk about this thing called intentional best friends, and I challenge the reader to consider who they have in their lives. Are the people in your lives all the same gender that are close to you? Are they all the same race, ethnicity, culture? Are they all the same economic status? Are they all the same weight? Are they all the same hair color? And then, take a hard look at the people you include in your life, and are you discluding or not including a particular group? And what are you missing out because maybe you don't have that group represented in your life? It's just something to look at, something to think about. And then the other thing too, like it's so easy, you talk about labeling and stigma. Talking to these officers at the police academy last week, there's a lot of stigma related to whatever a job that you do, right?
Yep.
And when I started this discussion with the police academy here, I listed 4 names, and I asked the officers what these 4 names were. And they were the names of 4 officers that had taken their lives since the January 6th, 2021 insurrection in Washington, D.C. These were officers that were there, that died, that just couldn't deal with the emotions of it. There was one officer I went to the police academy with in Flint, Michigan, where the water crisis was, if you've heard of that. And he took his own life. His name was James Barber, with a service weapon. The other thing related to law enforcement that was really kind of a big deal for getting me out of law enforcement was there was a study done in 2016 that the average life expectancy of a police officer is 21.9 years less than the average life expectancy of a normal person. This is done in Buffalo, New York. 21 years less than the average person. And it's like, I remember hearing about that while I was just starting off, and I was like, I want to live a lot longer than that.
Yes.
It was just
yes,
a job.
definitely.
I mean, it's interesting. What would you think would be, we're talking about law enforcement, but what would you think would be the number one occupation where suicide happens? I don't know if you've ever heard the statistic, but it's pretty mind-blowing. What would you think would be the number one job to have where suicide happens most often? putting you on the spot, but
yeah, I'm like,
yeah, just take
I
a
don't
stab. Take a
know.
stab at it.
I would say suicide would be high with, for some reason, I want to say teachers, but I don't know why I want to say that, but I want to
Well,
say
it's a stressful
teachers.
job. I mean, teaching is,
Yeah.
it's incredible, especially nowadays. I
Oh,
mean, to
yeah.
be in the COVID, pandemic arena, whether they believe it's true or not. I mean, this situation they're put in is pretty crazy.
It is.
And when I use the word crazy, as a person with a mental illness, I'm pretty serious about it.
Yeah.
The number one occupation, and this was done a study in 2018, where suicide is an issue, is dentists.
What?
Yes, dentists. Suicide is high. Is so high among dentists, and I have no idea why. But I talked to my dentist about it, and he said, "Yeah, it's a thing." And I'm like, wow, "That's so." I almost couldn't believe it when I heard the study,
Yeah.
and I was kind of scratching my head. I don't know. Maybe it's because everybody doesn't like going to the dentist. I mean, it's not. I'm not. My dentist is great, but it's not somebody I like to see very often.
Right. Same.
Um,
I don't like the dentist at all. Maybe that is why.
I have no idea, but
Maybe
it's freaking weird. And these, so as blown away as you are to hear that, like, it makes you stop and think, like, they make a lot of money, these doctors, and that's surprising to me. So who else in your world is probably struggling that would really surprise you? That outgoing friend who just always seems happy-go-lucky. Maybe you should check in on them. Maybe you should begin to open up and investigate that person's life a little bit more, ask some more tougher questions, because you really don't know. We don't know.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And a lot of times, especially when we're striving for that perfect exterior, those are the people who are suffering, like the people who have that money doesn't buy happiness. Just because someone has money does not mean that they're out on their yacht enjoying lives internally.
Mm-hmm.
Externally, someone can be, I put on a persona for years. Oh, I'm so happy living this life where I'm partying all the time and all these horrible relationships are happening. But on the outside, it seemed like everything was great, but on the inside, I was being tortured.
Mm-hmm.
I was sad. I wanted to end my life.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there, and that's not a place that anybody wants to be. And reaching out and checking in on your friends, like you said, it's so important, regardless of their social status, regardless of anything, like just reach out and let them know that you're there for them, because at the end of the day, we all need someone to reach out to. To tell you a little bit about my experience, with me being suicidal, if it wasn't for my husband 2 years ago, I wouldn't be here right now. Because I wanted to end my life, but I knew I had him and that I could reach out to him for help. And that is so important. And when you're going through a moment like that, it's hard to see that, especially if you feel like nobody cares about you. And even at that, I can't say that it's foolproof. There are people who still commit suicide who I'm sure had wonderful friends surrounding them. It still happens, but we can do our part and at least try our best to be there wholeheartedly as a friend to the people in our lives.
That's what happened with my friend. I mentioned it earlier in my book, my friend that took his life. And, he was my worship pastor. He was my best friend. And literally, he probably had, 450 people packed into the church when he had his funeral. And I remember, like, some of my lower times was like, it didn't matter to me that I had kids. It didn't matter to me that I had a wife. It's almost like I needed her to kind of smack me across the face with that, hey, you're going to the hospital thing. And that whole hidden perspective, that whole hidden struggle. There's a show on Hulu right now that my wife and I are watching called 9 Perfect Strangers.
Ooh, I want to watch that.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. I'm not going to, because it's so complicated. But I think it highlights that particular issue about hidden struggles. And yeah, go out and watch that. It's a great show. There's 4 episodes on right now. They're about an hour long each. I think they're going to get up to 8. It's also a book. So it's a best-selling book. Yeah. Buy my book and then buy that book.
Yeah. Yes, buy Joseph's books first.
Right. Oh my goodness. So many things that you touched on that are so good. And I'm, just having an ADD moment where I can't remember a thing of it.
I know. I do the same thing. I know. Because you get in these conversations and you're listening, you're taking everything in, and then it's like, wait, what? I do that all the time. Totally understand. But, that's the whole point of it. Like, we need to do better as a society to make sure that people in our lives know that we're there for them. Even, like you said, like, it didn't matter, your kids, your wife, like, that wasn't like a deciding factor for you, but your wife metaphorically slapped you in the face to snap you out of it, like you needed help. And we need to be able to do that for the people we love. We need to be able to do the difficult things and ask the difficult questions and really show up for the people we love.
Yeah, and it's risky business, and it's scary. But the way I deal with fear is head down and forward. As long as it's not a safety issue, usually whenever I face fear, it's an indication of something I should do. And every time that I've gone in there with faith and with prayer and with friend support, and I consult my friends, a lot, and my wife. It's like, yeah, do it. I know I'm afraid. It might be kind of silly. Like one time I walked around a 4th of July parade, and I was holding a sign, like a protest sign.
Oh,
a big old stick, and on the front it says, if you're looking for a sign to keep living, and on the back it said, this is it. And I just walked around the parade 4 miles carrying this sign, and got, first you get the initial weird look, like, what is he protesting? And then you get this, I remember an army that float passed by, and they saw that, and being a soldier is another high suicide job. And he saw that. He had me flip the sign around and read it, and he's like, give me 2 thumbs up. It's, if we're willing to take chances, sometimes we're going to be judged. And there's this idea of coping ahead. I talk about in my book, which is like, what do you do when the circumstances may not turn out really good for you? Like, how do you deal with it? How are you going to deal with that? In that situation, I did some major coping ahead. Like, I was going to get made fun of. People were going to harass me, but I just kept on getting high fives. People were just like, yeah, I needed to read that. And, I don't know if that really impacted anybody, but for me to take that step of courage definitely impacted me. And maybe that soldier guy, maybe he needed to read that. Yeah, I don't know. Don't know the impact, Amanda, that you're having with your podcast. With you just spoke at a summit. You don't know who you're reaching by being more vulnerable, by getting your story out there. But I guarantee you're reaching somebody. That's all that matters, is you're reaching somebody.
Yep. That's so true. It's about that one person. I have every day I'm fearful, about sharing my story and what kind of, horrible, what are people going to say about me now that they know I'm a felon, I'm an addict, I suffer with mental illness. Like, are people going to judge me? And guess what? I mean, knock on wood, I haven't gotten one negative response to the things that I've been doing, and I'm sure there's people out there who don't like me, but, but knowing that, hearing that you're inspiring someone, like you going through that parade with that sign, I can guarantee you that you impacted someone's life, because people need to see that, especially in the way life is now for all of us. Like, we need more encouragement to keep going, because things are so drastically different than they were a couple years ago. And we just really need to come together more and really be aware that mental illness is an issue. I my day job, I work in a mental health outpatient practice, and I'm telling you, like, we don't have the capacity to to take on all the people who are calling us for appointments.
Oh yeah.
It is a problem.
It's a real problem, and having a peer support group like I do, it's not as great as professionals do, but we're a space. We're just a space for my group, Broken People. It's a space where people come together and encourage one another who understand. But yeah, we're always encouraging to people to go get mental health professional help. And right now, it's packed. It's hard to get in there. So yeah, that's tough business. I think about, you are going to be judged, man. You're going to have a situation where somebody's going to look down on you for what you do. But I think about, whether he's a true historical character or not, the amazing story of Jesus, who the Son of God that they murdered, with all these great things that he was doing in the story. And I think what better example that, they're going to take this perfect person and literally tack him up on wooden poles and murder him. I think that's something we need to be ready for and prepared for, is that we're going to be, whether figuratively or literally, hung out to dry. So preparing ourselves to do what's right, regardless of what other people think or judge us or how they judge us. It's something I'm ready to do, and to give voice to the people that maybe can't or shouldn't share the story, depending upon whether or not they have the community of support that they need.
Yeah, it's so important to have support. I've been wanting to tell my story for years, but it wasn't until I had found true support, my husband, number one, and then into the online space, I found a true support system. And now when I post things, and if someone were to say a negative thing, my coach will tell me, there's a chance that I won't even have to react to it, because I have this support system around me that'll stand up for me before I even get a chance to.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to keep creating. We need to keep creating these positive environments where we can feel like we can say what we need to say to help that one person. Because if we don't, we're robbing that one person of the inspiration, of the hope that we can give them in that moment. So if you think about it, okay, I'm scared, but if you take you out of it and say, okay, but if I don't share this, who needs to hear this today that isn't going to get to because I'm scared? But you have to have support, because if you don't, and you do share your story and you get negative feedback, that could really be a difficult thing to go through on your own.
Yeah.
You have to have a support system, and you have to have people that will lift you up even when you're in your darkest moments. So important.
Yeah. One of the questions I was asked by a recruit at the police academy was, is this a worldwide problem? Because it seems like, in America, we're trying to drug mental health people, and it just seems like it's such a big deal, and sometimes seems like an excuse for certain behaviors here in America. They asked me if this is a worldwide issue, because my organization, Broken People, is in 44 countries.
Wow.
And but one thing I've traveled to probably seven or eight countries, most of which are third world countries, and I can categorically tell you that yes, it's a problem, but like you just mentioned, Amanda, it's not socially acceptable as a problem, so it's not talked about. There's not a platform for these people to share, so then they go online and kind of out themselves in a place that's safe. And Broken People, we've done that, and there are other great organizations out there that are trying to normalize this struggle, so that people in other countries, or really other cultures, even here in the United States, there are cultures where it is unacceptable to out yourself in terms of mental health. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal, and these cultures are like things like the NAACP and the Urban League are really trying to do things within the African American community to destigmatize the mental health struggle, and I applaud their efforts, and definitely huge need. But I don't know, about like the Asian community, or, I'm a middle class white guy, and it can be hard to get middle class white guys to talk about their struggle, but each one of us has a uh, unique set of environments and social settings that makes the challenge really unique to our situation. So, um, I just want to challenge everybody, wherever you are, whether you're fat, skinny, white, black, or whatever, is the more you come out, and the more you come out with the labels that what people typically put you in, the more acceptable that type of story or that struggle is going to be with people that kind of fit a similar label. For me, like a tall, you know, semi-muscular, people say muscular, okay, I'll just, whatever, bodybuilders, whatever, for me to come out, it might make it more acceptable for tall, built white guys to come out and talk about their struggle,
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
yeah, we just need to be less afraid.
Exactly. Wow. I wish that we could just keep talking and talking and talking because there's so much more I want to talk to you about.
Yeah.
But one last question that I really want to know is, what is your number one tip for everyone listening to allow the good things into their lives?
Yeah. So I'll give you two number one tips. The first one would be journaling. I think journaling is huge. In my book, I talk about different ways to journal if you're not much of a writer, but there's already been so much scientific evidence, that literal scientific studies about the health benefits of the literal making you healthy by journaling, helping with weight loss. There's a study done about the sport of tennis and how journaling has helped specific tennis players be better at their sport. It's amazing, and they're still trying to figure this out about the impact of journaling. Yeah, for me, the journaling thing is like every time I go to the hospital, drawing is something that I kind of resort to. And I feel like it's this weird scraping of the writing utensil against paper that is just so calming for me. And it's that way for journaling too. Like, yes, I'm writing down my thoughts, which is really good to get down there. But then this calming act of when you're writing, you're really just drawing. It's an artistic, it's a left brain and right brain thing. It really helps me kind of calm myself down. And sometimes I treat it like my own therapy. Like I'll put something down that's really negative, and then like, okay, now I reflect on that. Then the other thing for me, which I'm really serious about, is just prayer. This is a personal thing that I don't understand how it works. I don't know if it works.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, it's this cosmic mystery that I believe works. I believe it is, and so I keep doing it until I don't believe it anymore. And I know it's weird, but it's just something that I personally do that's been helpful for me. So there you go. Two number ones: journaling and prayer. Oh. And a lot of times my journaling is prayer. Like I can't focus enough to pray without writing, so I'll write my prayers down.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. That's smart. Yeah, I have a hard time. Like a lot of people talk about meditation. I'm like, yeah, I can't because I just can't. I'm too like antsy all the time. Like I can't sit there and do that. So what I do is I visualize, which is basically the same thing, but I do it while I'm going to sleep so that I'm already in kind of a relaxed state so that I can kind of think those thoughts and all of that. So I like that you mentioned that you write down prayers. That I love that. That's a really good idea.
Thanks.
I might have to do that. But also, how can people find you, Joseph? If they want to connect?
Well, right now I am on vacation on a lake in Nuevo, Michigan. But if you come to the house and stalk me, that would be kind of a weird way to find me. However, if you wanted to find me online, you can go to my website, which you mentioned is broken-people.org, or you can email me at joe@broken-people.org. It's funny, I put my email in my book, and it's a bestseller. It was a national bestseller on Amazon, and nobody that I don't know has taken advantage of that email, where they've just emailed me and said, "Hey, are you real? Is this really your email?" There are some authors that do that, and like one guy, Bob Goff, very famous author, puts his cell phone number in there. So I called it one day. It was legit his cell phone number.
Oh, wow.
It's just like, you think they would never do this. And like, if you get my book, yeah, email me. I'll email you back usually within like 3 or 4 hours. Yeah, it's we're humans. Amanda may appear to have the lifestyle of the rich and famous, but she's just a human. Reach out to her. Subscribe to her podcast, give her 5 stars, and then leave a message for her.
Thank you. Thanks. Yes, please do that. Thank you so much for being here, Joseph. This has been a really great and needed conversation. I appreciate your time.
Oh, yours too. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And as a reminder to everyone listening, remember, you are stronger than you think, and you can have the life you imagine, regardless of your past. Make sure to hit the subscribe or follow button so you don't miss an episode of the show, and I will talk to you all soon.